Welcome to Here's the Deal, your leader in sports, featuring everything you, the fans, want to talk about. From top 10 lists to predictions to debates, it's all covered right here. Hosted by Michael D. White Jr., a.k.a. The Bearded One.
Welcome all to the second episode of Here's the Deal. Guys, I'm going to admit, it's been a rough 2 days for me. Whenever I have to deal with the Packers losing in the fashion that they lost, it's always a rough 2 days for me. But we're going to get into that later in the show. I also got a guest today, Gabriel, all the way from El Paso. He'll be joining us later. Got quite a bit of topics to talk about today. But I want to start with the Broncos and the Cowboys game. It was a good game, and it really showed me some things. So the Broncos stomped the Cowboys this weekend. First off, let me just give props to Denver's defense for being the first legit team I've seen to actually just shut down Ezekiel Elliott, shut down that daunted Cowboys running game. That was a hell of a defensive performance. They held Ezekiel Elliott to 8 yards on 9 carries. He averaged less than a yard a carry. So, man, that Denver defense is something you guys really need to pay attention to. It's definitely looking like it's going to lead that Broncos to the AFC playoffs. Definitely that. They forced Dak to a career high of 50 pass attempts and a rare 2 interceptions. You know, most people we've known, as we've seen Dak Prescott through the first season, and so far he's a rather accurate fellow. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but he also doesn't commit that many pass attempts per game. So I think that was the game plan. Denver wanted to stop that run and make Dak beat them through the air, make him have to throw tight throws against Aqib Talib and Chris Harris Jr., and that's exactly what Denver wanted. They wanted him to throw 50 passes because they believe that their corners can outplay the wide receivers and the tight ends of the Dallas Cowboys. And on top of that, Bryant, his drops and his lack of ability to take over games has people still questioning his status as an elite receiver in the league. And we'll get into that later. But outside of the red zone, Bryant, he doesn't show that ability to take over games anymore. He had a drop that was ultimately intercepted and returned for a touchdown. It was just bad. Dallas defense looked horrendous, man. They gave up 118 yards to C.J. Anderson on the ground. And through the air, they let Trevor Siemian throw for 4 touchdowns. Trevor Siemian, not Aaron Rodgers, not Matt Ryan, not Tom Brady. Trevor Siemian. Like, if Trevor Siemian's going to throw 4 touchdowns on your defense, you got to start looking at your schedule, see who you got coming up, and you got to fix that before you finally get to that area of your schedule where it's going to get tougher. And you're going to go against some of these all-pro quarterbacks. If you're giving up 4 touchdowns to Trevor Siemian, what do you think some of these other quarterbacks are going to do? A Matt Ryan from the Falcons, Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay. So Dallas, I think they needed to lose this game. I'm kind of glad they lost it early. This will humble them. You know, they've been really successful regular season-wise. They lost that game to the Packers in the playoffs. But I think this game will humble them. It'll make them go back to the drawing board, make them get back to the roots of what they do well and really try to implement that. And my bottom line from that game is Denver's game plan and defense, it worked perfectly on Sunday. And after a win like that, barring injury, as long as Siemian doesn't turn the ball over, the Broncos are serious contenders in the AFC. I think they have easily the best defense in the AFC. They definitely have the best secondary. And then their offense just does just enough to win games. And with Trevor Siemian doing more than just enough, that's a scary team going down the line. So that was a great showing by the Broncos. They really surprised me. I didn't expect the game to be like that. I actually picked the Cowboys to win last week because I thought Zeke would be able to run the ball and dominate the game that way, and that offensive line would be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, but it was the total opposite. So props to the Broncos for that. Let's not get too crazy about it. Cowboys are still going to be one of the top teams this year, but they definitely have some things they need to go look at in that secondary and up front. But let's move to the game that hurt me the most, dear to my heart. The Falcons just dismantled the Packers. Straight dismantle. I've come to the conclusion that the Atlanta Falcons is Green Bay's worst matchup in the league at home. When the Falcons are at home on that turf, they look flat out amazing. That offense, everybody looks faster, everything's clicking. And my initial thoughts about this game was Green Bay's defense has improved, but they were just still outmatched by that speed of the Falcons. A buddy of mine was telling me on Facebook, he believes that, the Falcons are a mismatch for everybody in the league, and I could see that. I don't know about the Broncos. We would have to see that. But especially at home, opening up that new stadium, man, those guys were just flying all around. Now, granted, Green Bay was missing their starting left tackle and their right tackle going into the game. And as the game kept going, the injuries started piling up. They lost Mike Daniels on the first series of the game. They lost Jordy Nelson on the first series of the game. He ended up being out the whole game. They had already started the game without their starting corner and Devon House and their safety Bryce, and then Cobb went out in the third quarter and never returned. It was just a lot of injuries for the Packers. But even still, even with those injuries, during that first series that Atlanta came down the field when everybody was remotely healthy, it would just look outmatched. Julio looked like he was just picking up right where he left off in the NFC Championship game last year. It was just ugly, and part of me wants to place the blame on Ted Thompson, not so much because of just how we lost, but his just inability to sign free agents. It comes to a time like you're never going to look at some of these teams that are having quarterback issues. The Jets and the Jaguars and the 49ers, they would kill to have an Aaron Rodgers, and they would make those sacrifices paying a little bit more money to bring in better players. And I understand he wants to build through the draft, but it's ultimately hurt the success of this team. Now, they've been a successful team as far as making the playoffs, but they only have that one Super Bowl win in 2010. So I really have to start looking at the organization as a whole when I start seeing that they don't want to go out and sign big names. We had Ty Montgomery in there running the ball. He's been doing okay, but why didn't we go get a workhorse like Adrian Peterson, where Ty Montgomery could still play wide receiver and we can get a ball to Adrian Peterson 26 to 27 times a game? These are the kind of things that I think about. But back to the good Falcons, though. They forced Aaron Rodgers, who was 33 of 50 for 343 and 2 TDs, into a rare interception, which resulted in 7 points. And then Vic Beasley came in, landed a monster hit on him, a strip sack, and it resulted as a touchdown as well. Aaron Rodgers has to be better in those situations. Granted, his line was not doing a great job, but you still got to hold on to that ball. You still cannot commit turnovers, especially if they're getting returned for 7. Even just committing turnovers and giving the ball back to that Atlanta offense at home is just the wrong move. Devontae Freeman had his way at the line, 19 carries for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Every time I looked up, he was getting a first down on like a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. And the run defense looked horrible without Mike Daniels. The defense that looked good last week just looked too slow for the Falcons, who picked up their first win in their new stadium. And then Julio Jones, like I mentioned earlier, he had a monster first half and finished with 5 receptions for 108 yards. There's just no guarding that man. Matt Ryan played a good mistake-free game, though, going 19 of 28 for 252 yards and 1 touchdown. So the Falcons, a lot of people were questioning whether their offense could look the same. I never questioned whether their offense could look the same. I figured there would be a small adjustment period with a new offensive coordinator in there. But at the end of the day, when you have those guys in those skill positions, when you have Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman and Julio Jones and Sanu, you're going to be successful no matter what. Those guys are just too good, especially at home. So my bottom line for this game is Green Bay still has defensive problems that need addressing, as well as offensive line issues. And the Falcons' offense can be just as explosive at home as before when they had Kyle Shanahan. So that was a great showing by the Falcons. Good win for them to get that first win. And I don't know what's going on with my Packers. We got to figure it out, man, because I just didn't like the way we look. And knowing that's a team we're going to have to face down the line most likely, we definitely got to figure that out. But let's move on to the reigning NFL champions, the Patriots. They bounced back against the Aints. I'm not even going to call them the Saints today. They don't deserve the S. They deserve an A. I'm going to call them the Aints. After the Patriots lost last week, all types of buzz has started about the Patriots, that Tom Brady was going to fall off the map. He's 40. He's no longer accurate. Luckily for him, he got the Aints defense in week 2, and he went berserk. 30 for 39, 447 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And even there was even a Gronk sighting out there. He returned to form before, of course, what a surprise, leaving the game with an apparent groin injury. But he finished the day with 6 receptions and 116 yards and 1 touchdown. On the other side of the ball, Drew Brees was 27 of 45, 356, 2 TDs. Decent game, but he couldn't sustain drives early in the game. And one thing I'm still not understanding, maybe a guest can help me understand, why is Adrian Peterson an afterthought in this offense? He only had 8 carries. He's being wasted away for the second straight week. Until the Saints establish some sort of identity and establish some sort of defense, they'll continue to be a 7-9 caliber team and miss the playoffs and be at the bottom of the NFC South. I don't understand why they paid Adrian Peterson this money if we don't plan on using him like he's Adrian Peterson. I just don't get it. Why not make things easier for Drew Brees by running Adrian Peterson up the middle on first down? I don't get it. But my bottom line from that game is the Patriots can still be dangerous if they're healthy. But one of my questions I'm asking myself, was this more good Patriots or bad Saints? We'll revisit that question later in the show with the guest, with Gabriel when he comes on. But, yeah, I don't know what the Saints are thinking, not running Adrian Peterson more. Sean Payton and his staff need to talk and figure something out. But let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks, who picked up their first win of this 2017 regular season. But to be honest, I wasn't impressed at all. I mean, a win is a win at the end of the day. But that offensive line, or lack thereof, it reared its ugly head again for the Seahawks. As for a second straight game, they struggled on offense all day. You guys wouldn't even believe that through 3 quarters, it was tied 3-3. The Seahawks and the 49ers were tied through 3 quarters, 3-3. Carlos Hyde paced the 49ers in the game with 15 carries for 124 yards, and Russell Wilson finally threw his first TD of the season in the fourth to pull away from the 49ers. But, man, that Seattle offense, it just looks horrendous. You know, it's rare you would say an offense that has Russell Wilson, Jimmy Graham, and Doug Baldwin looks horrendous, but it does, and it starts at that line. They just can't get anything sustained. But the fact that it took basically a game-winning TD to pull away from the 49ers, who have Brian Hoyer as their starting running back, it isn't saying much about the Seahawks. I'm not impressed with this win. They still got a lot of work to do. It's good the Seahawks got the first one of the season, especially in a division game, but they need to figure out that offense fast, or it's going to be a long season for them. I do expect them to figure out something to help Russell Wilson. I do expect the Seahawks to make the playoffs, but I don't know what they're going to do if they got to go to a home game in Atlanta and face that fast defense. With that offensive line, Russell Wilson will be running for his life the whole entire game. So the Seahawks got to figure that out. Yep, so let's transition, over to that Thursday night game. My guy, Deshaun Watson, finally got his first NFL career start. It was his 22nd birthday and ended up being a win. It wasn't the prettiest night for Watson throwing the ball, who went 15-24 for 125 yards, but he showed poise at times and showed the ability to make plays with his legs, scoring the game's only touchdown on a 49-yard run. And, you know, honestly, I just think going forward, he's the best option at QB for the Texans. You know, they have a plethora of injuries right now, but I think he gives them the best chance to win just on the fact that he's athletic, he can move around in that pocket, he can get out the pocket, he can make big plays. Savage is okay, but he's just a sitting duck in the pocket. You know, for a team that was missing 3 tight ends, their number 2 receiver, and their starting guard, you have to be able to pick up first downs. And straight up, I just believe that Deshaun Watson gives the Texans the best chance to win games. Plain and simple over Tom Savage. He started connecting with Hopkins a little bit more, and, you know, he broke off that big run. So I think from here on out, that's what we'll see, barring anything, injuries or anything like that. We'll see Deshaun Watson from now on, and I think that's what we should see from now on. He's the best answer in Houston, and I think if he can figure it out, they can get healthy again, get that defense percolating at a level they were like last year. The Houston Texans could be eerie similar to the Denver Broncos. I don't know if their defense could be that elite, but it's definitely elite in the top 5 of defenses all around. They have that potential. So yeah, Deshaun Watson definitely answer for the Houston Texans. But let's move on to America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, who I despise, sorry. But I just wanted to ask you guys and talk. Dude, I've been seeing a lot of questions about Dez Bryant. Is he still elite? Is this guy still an elite receiver? Would you take him top 5? Are there receivers you would take over him? After a relatively pedestrian performance in Denver against some of the top corners in the game, albeit, Dez Bryant did his normal out-muscle you in the end zone, but outside of that, he didn't take over the game like we're accustomed to seeing. The talk around the league is Dez Bryant is still elite. So what I did was I looked through all the wide receivers, and basically what I did was if a draft was happening and we were just doing all receivers, I have my list of all the receivers I would take over Dez Bryant. And this is basically where I put him at around the league. So I would take a healthy Odell Beckham Jr. over Dez Bryant. Plain and simple, I think Odell Beckham Jr. is the best receiver in the league, hands down. It's not even a question. Julio Jones, speed, size, always open. I got to give it to him. I would take A.J. Green over Dez Bryant. I would take Antonio Brown over Dez Bryant. Some of you are not going to agree with this one, but I'm a homer. I'm going to take Jordy Nelson over Dez Bryant. I'm going to take Mike Evans from Tampa Bay over Dez Bryant. I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm even going to take the young buck Amari Cooper out of Oakland. And then that's where I have Dez Bryant. So I named 8 people for Dez Bryant. So that would put him at 9th as the 9th best receiver on my list. A lot of people are not going to be happy with that ranking, but I don't believe he is elite anymore. I just believe he is an above average wide receiver. Very good wide receiver. Still top 10, not top 5 anymore. Obviously, injuries have derailed him. New quarterback coming in there, not forcing the ball to him. I think that has derailed him. Now, is this shade to Bryant? Of course not. I still believe he's at the top of the list as far as a red zone threat. I believe he's top 2 elite guys as far as when you're in the red zone, who you could just throw the ball and he'll go get it. And he'll still have games where he will dominate. But that magical period between 2012 and 2014 is behind him for good. And I believe all the guys I named before him are better route runners, and they don't drop the ball as much as him. Dez dropped some easy passes. He dropped one this Sunday and it ended up being intercepted. So do I think Dez Bryant is an elite? Yes, I don't think he's elite anymore. But he's very good, and he's an elite red zone threat. And I don't believe that'll be going anywhere. I believe as long as he maintains that size, not a lot of guys can really guard him in the red zone, but everywhere else outside of that 20 yards, he's just very good. He's not elite. But anyways, let me move to my standouts for this week, man. These are my standout guys. These guys really went out there and performed this week, put the team on their back, and really showed that they came to play. So first I got Tom Brady, 30 for 39, 447 yards, 3 touchdowns. Granted, it was against the Saints. Young, inexperienced defense. But Tom Brady bounced back from an average performance last week and got the Patriots their first win of the season. So that's my first guy that stood out to me. Next on the list, I got Travis Kelce, 8 receptions, 103, 1 touchdowns. Look, inside the numbers, outside the numbers, in the backfield, it really doesn't matter where you line up Travis Kelce. He is as effective and as dangerous as any tight end in the league. And what's even better, he isn't always hurt. I ain't gonna say no names, but at least Travis Kelce can stay on the field. So he's my second standout player this week. And third, I got Trevor Siemian. I have to give it to the young guy. 22 of 32, 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, just 1 interception. Is the Dallas defense good? No. But did we expect Trevor Siemian to throw 4 touchdowns and look like he could make a Pro Bowl? Hell no. The young kid came out there. He took advantage of his great defense. And if he continues to throw like this, the AFC should definitely watch out for the Broncos, because that defense by itself is something to be scared of the Broncos about. Imagine if they got their quarterback play up to par. And next, of course, I have to pick 3 people for my go home you drunk players. These guys, this week was just a bad week for them. for one of these guys, second bad week in a row that he made my list. Once you make 3 of them, I got to call you general manager. We got to talk. We got to get you out of there. So first things first, let's talk about Andy Dalton. 20 of 35, 224 yards, a QB rating of 29.1. Look, Andy Dalton continued his audition for someone's backup QB next year, basically, by failing to score a touchdown in a second straight home game for the Bengals. Dalton, he just continues to look inaccurate and out of sync. And if I'm Marvin Lewis, I think it's really time to start considering McCarron. Or maybe a certain mobile quarterback who hasn't found a home yet. Just saying, Andy Dalton's second week in a row that you just played like trash. It's time to start looking at this guy and wondering if he's the answer. Next, I love this guy's name. Young-Ho Koo. Young-Ho Koo, the kicker from the San Diego Chargers. He was 1 for 3 for field goals this week, missed a potential game winner as time expired. The season hasn't started good for Young-Ho Koo after getting a potential game-winning field goal blocked last week and then missing a game winner this week. The Korean rookie out of Georgia Southern, he's seen better days, and with the Chargers already in the 0-2 small hole, Coach Lynn has already brought up in bringing in some kicking competition. Look, Young-Ho, you got to knock down these kicks, man. You're on the big stage now. You can't be doing all this missing. That's two strikes against you for being clutch. You got to perform better, man, or you're going to lose that job. Kickers get fired like that in the NFL. And last but not least, for my go home, you're drunk players, it's actually not a player, it's a coach. I had to put a coach on here. Coach Sean Payton. Oh my gosh. Now look, I like Sean Payton. He's a good coach. But what was the point of signing Adrian Peterson if you're just going to give him 8 carries, even less than last week? I get it. You have Drew Brees, the future Hall of Famer, but you didn't pay this man to chill on the sidelines. The Saints only attempted, how many rushing yards did they attempt? Barely any. It was horrible. They only attempted 17 rush yards in general. I mean, give the ball to AP, let him go out, get you 4 to 5 yards on first down, and make Drew Brees' life easier, plain and simple. So those are my go home, you're drunk players for this week, guys. Man, those guys got to do some work, man. Andy Dalton, Young-Ho, and Coach Sean Payton. But next, I want to transition to one of my favorite parts of my show. You know, guys, I like to include guests, man. And I like for guests to give their opinion because I know these guys out here, I'm in a couple groups on Facebook. You guys have a lot to say, and you guys are really knowledgeable. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest. This is Gabe. Gabe, how you doing, man?
Better than I deserve to be, in the words of financial advisor Dave Ramsey. Yourself?
All right, hey, look, man, I'm doing great. It's the second episode of Here's the Deal. I'm really excited. What do you do, man? What's your favorite NFL team? Let me know about you. Let the people know about you.
Okay, well, my name is Gabriel. I go by Gabe. My favorite football team, NFL, is the Atlanta Falcons, being that I am from Atlanta, Georgia, so I go for the home team. My current occupation is I am a manager for Mars Incorporated for their pet care department, and on the side, I also make money as a musician and, believe it or not, a drag queen.
So look, a man of every trade, and I heard you're a Falcon fan. I'm a Packer fan, so you know we're gonna have to get into that here in a few.
Oh yeah.
But let's not to keep the people waiting any longer. I just want to jump straight into it. So, what are your thoughts on the Denver-Dallas game? Let's hear that.
Okay, the Denver-Dallas game. Before I make any statement about any of the questions being asked towards me, I am going to present all of my comments and anything regarding that in an unbiased manner.
Okay.
In the same that if you ask me any political questions, I would keep it nonpartisan. So there's not going to be any bias for me regarding this. I'm going to look at this strictly from a technical view and one of the soundness and validity of the game.
Okay.
So as far as that. Okay, so with Dallas, Dallas has enjoyed a balanced offense at the start of the Dak and Zeke era. I mean, no one's going to argue about that. That 1-2 punch combo of them has been extremely effective.
Right.
We saw that during the 2016 era, all throughout it, and even during the playoff game, at least in the second half. But they didn't show that against the Broncos. Ezekiel Ezekiel Elliott, he rushed for just 8 yards on 7 carries.
Mm-hmm.
And Prescott completed 60% of passes for 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. We've never seen them get beat like this. I mean, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they have gotten beaten thus far in the Dak Prescott era, it's been by, 7 or less points?
Every time, both Giants game and the Packers game where they eventually came back, they were all close losses.
Yeah, they were close losses. But the thing is, this Cowboys team barely resembled the team that beat the Giants in Week 1. I mean, Week 1, they looked a lot better. They looked like the boys that we had seen in the 2016 season. Because in that game, Elliott had 24 carries for 104 yards. Looked like classic Ezekiel Elliott. Well, maybe classic's a bit of a stretch. We've only seen him 1 year of play. Prescott took just 1 sack, and he didn't turn the ball over. And the defense held New York to just a field goal. They were consistently good last season in Week 1. And this performance could be just a bump in the road for the Cowboys. I mean, it's still too early in the season to jump to conclusions here. But with the defensive injuries and the way the Broncos coaching staff cracked the code, just slowing down their offense may have more lasting implications. Now, did you read about any of the post-game comments made by any of the Dallas players and coaching staff?
No, I didn't. Let us know.
Okay, so Jason Garrett, Dallas head coach, laid the blame of the loss on Dak Prescott's shoulders. And Dak, being the guy that he is, took the blame for it. We've seen this type of character and response from him before, like when he had gotten that DUI charge when he was playing with Mississippi State. We won't go into that. Well, first of all, I think any comment about a player, their performance, should be kept behind closed doors. There's some stuff you don't say to the media. I mean, you ever heard of keeping it in-house?
Of course.
That's exactly what I think should have happened. You shouldn't have said these kind of comments. Now, can you put it on Dak? Yes and no. Obviously, they shut down the run game. And I'm going to use an earlier example. I don't know how long you've been watching football, but the 1998 Falcons had a strong run game, and their running back, Jamal Anderson. But in Super Bowl 33, when they went there, the Denver defense, and Denver's historically had a great defense, as we've seen, that no-fly zone defense, they were able to box in Jamal Anderson's run game and force Chris Chandler to rely on his passing game, which wasn't great. And, Dak's passing game normally relies on short passes. I've never really seen him do much deep ball. So, yeah, I mean, he did suffer greatly because he had to go outside of his comfort zone.
Right, and one thing I wanted to mention that I was taking into effect when I watched that game, as I was looking through the stats at the end of the game, he attempted a career-high 50 pass attempts. That is not the formula that the Cowboys have been putting out there, and I think Denver's game plan, that's what they wanted. They believed that their corners were better than Dallas's receivers, and they were going to force Dak to throw that ball 50 times. That's not going to win it for Dallas. That is not the way they do things there.
Yeah, and the Cowboys' inability to sustain drives and keep up with the Broncos was just bigger than just the offensive line, though. I mean, you're correct on that. And what I noticed, and maybe you did too, is it impacted Garrett's play calling as well. That's where I'm saying some of the blame lies on him too. He chose to go for it on a couple of fourth downs in Broncos territory out of desperation to narrow the gap in the score, and the attempts were unsuccessful. Yeah,
you definitely, Jason Garrett, I'm not sold on him as a coach yet. I think last year, the way Ezekiel ran the ball, it made it so much easier to call these dink and dunk pass plays. But once that run got stopped today, you saw his play calling isn't the best. It's just not.
No, I've always said this, that Jason Garrett is the personification of mediocrity. I'll give it this. He's had 2 great seasons, 2014 and the 2016 campaign last year. How long is the front office going to keep justifying his lack of success. He's never made it past the divisional round in the playoffs. He's shown time and time again that he has an inability to call aggressively when it's needed. I mean, traditionally his play calling focuses on long and intermediate routes. But the problem with that, it relies on a strong running game and ability to score in the red zone. I think, honestly, if this season doesn't come to fruition for them, it's time to have a come-to-Jesus meeting with Jason Garrett, because there have been coaches that have been fired for much less than the lack of success that he's had.
And that's definitely true. So I'll ask you this question. Give me one sentence. Bottom line, Denver, Dallas.
Denver, Dallas, it was a complete blowout, and it should be a wake-up call for this Dallas team that might have overestimated an opponent. I know that I underestimated Trevor Siemian, and I've talked negatively as far as the connotations I've attributed to him, but he came to play.
That is true. That is true. Let's move on to the next game. Atlanta, Green Bay. I know you just said you're an Atlanta Falcon fan, so I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna bite the bullet on your review of this game. Go ahead and give it to me. What were your biggest takeaways? What you got from that Atlanta Green Bay game?
Okay, again, let's look at this from an unbiased perspective. So coming into this game, we had two questions. So the two questions were, number one, is Green Bay's defense better than we gave them credit for? Because I saw how many yards that they held against the Seahawks offensive line to.
Right.
And question number two was, is the Atlanta Falcons offense starting to regress? And the answer to both of those questions is no. Everyone looked shaky during week one. We can all say that.
Right.
And they were the Falcons. They enjoyed convincing 34-23 win on Sunday Night Football over the 1-0 Green Bay Packers. I mean, they came out red hot on offense and stifled Rodgers throughout the game, and they relented a little towards the end of the third quarter. But instead of crumbling and allowing the Packers to creep back in, they shut the door with some impressive defensive plays and some clock-killing offensive drives late in the game. Now, I'll go back to week one with the Falcons. There were plenty of hot takes and alarm silence after their offense struggled against Chicago in week one. My thing is this. So they've got a new offensive coordinator named Steve Sarkisian, right?
Right.
Week one against Chicago was his first NFL game. Professional NFL game. Previous to that, he had been a college coach, and I saw that he was running the offense like he was in an FBS game. There was a lot of running the ball with some short to intermediate passes. I mean, because when you watch an FBS game, when you watch college football game, most of the offensive schemes are a spread offense.
Right.
Especially if you're in a system school in which most of your players are more athletic than the other team, then you rely completely on that. That's why you see quarterbacks scramble a lot more in college than you do the NFL. Of course, in the NFL, you have those scrambling quarterbacks that just still can do that. They're anomalies, like Michael Vick and Cam Newton. But with that, I do want to continue on that, and with that, we saw the Falcons pass rush make real strides from a 2015 season, which they finished dead last in the league with sacks. They only had 19. But their 34 sacks last year made them a respectable 16th in the league, about average. It's a substantial improvement, but outside of the NFL sack leader, Vic Beasley, the rest of the unit just couldn't consistently produce pressure. But with that, I do want to say this. Green Bay responded very well later on in the third quarter. Because if you notice in the third quarter, their defense went into that familiar scheme. I'm talking about that prevent-style defense.
Right.
That soft zone coverage. And Green Bay took advantage of that scheme and immediately marched marched inside the Atlanta end zone.
Yeah, once Atlanta started dropping more people back to the secondary, and there was actually time for Aaron Rodgers to throw the ball, that's when he started picking up the majority of his yards and was able to move the downfield much more successfully. Because, the Packers, they were still missing their starting left tackle and their starting right tackle. So
I was about to bring that up. David Bakhtiari and Brian Bulaga.
Right, yep.
Those are starting offensive tackles.
Yep, they were both out of that game. And then the first series, they lost Jordy Nelson. And even though people like to say the Packers have a deep receiving core, and I do believe that, Jordy Nelson is that Julian Edelman from the Patriots. He's that guy that Aaron Rodgers is always on the same page with. All those back shoulder throws, sometimes when you see Aaron Rodgers throw an incompletion to someone and you're wondering, why did the receiver not cut back? Those are the things that Jordy Nelson has learned over time and has mastered those routes. So as soon as he went out the game, even though I know we have outstanding receivers, I was kind of worried because he's like our third down converter, our big play converter. I knew it was going to have some trouble. They lost Mike Daniels on the defensive side. First series of the game, the guy who had a good week last week stopping the run. Couldn't stop Devontae Freeman. Couldn't stop Tevin Coleman when he got in the game. It was just bad. It was bad.
Right. And not only that, you're not only referring to the actual execution of plays, but you got to take morale into consideration. Losing Jordy Nelson was a big morale hit for Green Bay, and when Green Bay was starting to slowly come back, getting picked off by Trufant was definitely a morale killer too, which I noticed that's what he was building up. But up until that point, after that, it prevented any comeback from them. Honest to God, by the time the clock hit 1 minute into the fourth quarter, the only person watching who honestly thought Green Bay was going to come back was Chris Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworth will ride with Aaron Rodgers until his deathbed.
And Joe and Troy too. I mean, if I could find someone that talked about me like Joe and Troy talked about Aaron Rodgers, I'd marry them.
That is definitely true. So with that being said, give me the bottom line from that game. What's your bottom line that you took away?
Okay, here's my bottom line. With Green Bay, they really need to start looking at building a defense. Okay, so that's my level of concern. The Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010.
Right.
What else does that have in common with everything else? That was the last year they had a defense in the top 10 in either scoring or total yards. And it seems to me, since the year after where they won the Super Bowl and they were 15-1, they've been complacent. They don't participate in the free agency. I can name some notable Green Bay free agents in the last decade on one hand. Julius Peppers, Martellus Bennett, Charles Woodson.
Charles Woodson, that's it. I was going to bring that point up too. Ted Thompson. I was talking about this earlier when I was talking about the Packers. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Ted Thompson fan. But when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, look at some of these other teams that wish they had a quarterback. Look at the Jets. Look at the 49ers. Look at the Bears. Look at how they struggle with no quarterback. When you get a guy who's all-time great of this caliber, you have to start biting the bullet and trying to get players on that team. There was a chance where Green Bay was in need of a running back a few years ago, and we could have got Marshawn Lynch, but we whiffed on that. And I don't understand why. This offseason, granted, I like Ty Montgomery. He's been solid catching out of the backfield and running. But you don't think Green Bay could use an Adrian Peterson 26, 27 times up the middle? That's the kind of back that we need. And I understand he wants to build through the draft, but at some point, you got to look at it like, look, Aaron Rodgers is 30-something years old. He's not going to be this mobile and this good all his life. You know what I mean? So it's time, while you got him in his prime, to start putting the necessary players around him like Bill Belichick did this offseason.
If you don't do that, you're eventually going to get to the point where, we'll go on this later, where the Saints are at, where you have a generationally talented quarterback backed by an awful defense. But I will say the one good takeaway about Green Bay's defense, I'm gonna have to say King was a really standout player.
Oh yes, Kevin King. He should be starting number one corner next week.
I mean, look at it. He matched up against all-pro receiver Julio Jones on a number of snaps and held his own, breaking up a pass intended for Jones and one-on-one coverage in the end zone, and another on a short crossing route early in the third quarter. That was a standout performance for him.
It definitely was. There was also a play where I can't remember if he was on Sanu. I think it was Sanu where they threw like a little screen dump off, and he made a great open field tackle, no yards gained. That was my only positive from that. I liked what I saw from the young guy. I think he should be starting. But I want to move away from that game. I want to keep going because, first off, you're doing great. I like everything you've said so far. So next, I'm really eager to hear. I think Deshaun Watson is the answer for Houston. Don't you?
Yeah. I mean, now there was a problem with his performance early on in the Jacksonville game they had. I'm sure you recall that one.
Right.
Where Fournette just had a breakout game and set a franchise record for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Granted, to be honest, it's not that hard to break franchise records for the Jaguars. I mean, it's only existed as a franchise, an expansion franchise since '96. But I'm not taking away from what he's been able to do. But I think everyone has gotten a little too used to breakout rookie quarterbacks, like Dak Prescott's rookie season, RG3's rookie season. Now, before I continue, let me ask you this. How long have you been watching football for?
I can honestly say I've been watching football legit since I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I'm about to be 25 in 2 weeks, so a good little time.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. So you remember, before, what they used to do with rookie quarterbacks is they would sit behind a veteran quarterback for a year, learn the system, and get acclimated to the environment of the NFL, because from college to the NFL is a huge transition. That's why you see so many busts. And because of all these huge wave of standout rookie quarterbacks, we think, people are getting acclimated to thinking that's the standard, that it's the norm, but it's not, And that's not how it is for most rookie quarterbacks. So to judge Deshaun off of 1 or 2 games, I think is completely unfair to him, because he performed great compared to, the other standout rookie quarterbacks I've mentioned. Absolutely not. But, give him a chance. That's what I'm saying, because his play, I can't attribute anything to his play that would make me think that he's not going to be the answer for Houston.
Right. Even though he didn't throw any touchdowns, that 50-yard run, that was something that can't be taught.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
That right there shows that was a spark of something, and I can tell, and you can tell with a lot of rookie quarterbacks. I think a big thing to take away from this is his attitude. I truly believe that he's willing to learn, and he's willing to listen, and he's willing to go over the playbook and actually read what's in it.
Bottom line, he's willing to be coached straight up and down. He's willing to be coached.
That's a big thing.
It is. It's a very big thing especially when it comes to young running backs who are mobile. That's an even bigger thing.
Oh yeah, and that's why you saw. I believe. That's the biggest reason I think remember Tim Tebow?
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason I believe he washed out of the league. He's used to being big, strong, and fast, but welcome to the NFL where everyone is big, strong, and fast.
Exactly.
He kept trying to rely on that, didn't learn on the playbook, and didn't want to be coached. He went to New England where they always make something out of nothing, and they didn't even see anything in him. So I want to say something about that. But bottom line is he's got a great work ethic, and I'm expecting good things out of him. I mean, Houston's had some major quarterback turnover. How many? 14 since 2014?
Too many to name.
Yeah, so, I mean, they've worked for this draft pick, so I think it would be absolutely insane for them to give up on him too soon and too early into this.
Definitely agreed. Let's move on, though. I was talking before you got on the line about Des Bryant, and I was talking about him, whether I think he's elite or not, and I actually went down all the wide receivers, and I want you to listen to my list here. These are all the receivers I would, if we were just drafting wide receivers, I would take before him. So on the list, I got Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, AJ Green, Antonio Brown, Jordy Nelson, Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, and then I get into Dez Bryant. So my question for you, is it safe to say that Dez Bryant is very good but not elite anymore?
Okay, so this might be a controversial comment and take on this. I agree that all of those receivers you listed are what you would consider an elite receiver. Maybe one or two of them are system receivers, but most of the rest of those you could fill them in any playbook or any team offensive line, and they would still be able to perform. But my thing is, yeah, I think Dez Bryant's still elite. Now, hear me out. On the surface, it seems like an easy argument to make. I mean, during the 2015 and 2016 Dallas Cowboys campaign, Dez had season averages of just 40 receptions, 598 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. So if you look at those numbers, it looks like he's definitely not an elite receiver. But before we get started with that, let's take a look at the 3 seasons that put Dez Bryant in the elite picture to begin with. From the 2012 to 2014, with might I add, a relatively healthy Tony Romo under center, he averaged 144 targets, 91 receptions, 1,312 receiving yards, 14.4 yards per reception, and 14 touchdowns each season. Regardless of the era you're playing in, those are truly elite numbers for an NFL wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So those stats, to me, should put that argument to bed pretty quickly. But let's move forward to this. Okay, so the thing, you got to look at the differences. He's used to Tony Romo, who I'd say is a deep ball passer. And we said this earlier when we were talking about the Dallas and Denver game, what did they rely on a lot last year? The run game.
Exactly.
So, okay, one thing that most veteran quarterbacks learn in the NFL is the ability to trust certain wide receivers. Dez Bryant doesn't have the most blinding speed in the league, but he never has. He's the type of receiver that is still open, even if he technically doesn't look that way, especially in single coverage. And with Dak, I noticed that, I will say this. The back shoulder fade isn't the easiest ball for a quarterback to throw. And with him being a rookie, Dak struggled trying to make his pass for the majority of the season. And at times, it even looked downright ugly, if you ask me. So Dallas still checked to it at times, and as the season went on last year, they started to go away from it more than in years past. Because Dak excelled in finding other ways to score, they didn't feel compelled to force the issue. And with that, the point I'm trying to make is this inevitably hurt Dez's overall touchdown numbers. I know you're not a Falcons fan, but you can make a similar argument to Roddy White's last year in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
When Kyle Shanahan came in as an offensive coordinator, his scheme didn't really fit well. Roddy White really didn't fit well in his scheme. So Roddy White wasn't included in many of the plays. And, if you just look at straight stat sheets, it looks like Roddy White played horribly. That he wasn't really a productive receiver. So you can make that argument. And so, what I'm saying is it's completely reasonable to assume that he could have had 2 to 5 more touchdowns if he had a quarterback who's experienced in throwing that back shoulder fade that I was mentioning from the end zone from the start of the season. If that happens, his 8 touchdowns potentially jump into the 10 to 13 range. For reference, and correct me if I'm wrong, the leader in the NFL last season was Jordy Nelson, who had 14 receiving touchdowns.
Of course.
Am I right there? Okay. But hey, Dak Prescott wasn't the only reason that Dez saw his numbers drop. The Cowboys' offense as a whole is, as I said, simply not geared toward the heavy passing game anymore. So my thing is, I'll finish with this. I still think he's very much an elite NFL wide receiver. Now, some of the guys you mentioned, I think, are better than him. But if he and his quarterback can remain relatively healthy, and Dak Prescott can continue to evolve as a passer, he should put up solid numbers. But they don't throw the ball as much. That's the thing. They won't be quite as prolific as a few other of the elite receivers in the league, or as he was between 12, 2014. Nonetheless, my thing is his touchdown numbers and total impact on the field, I believe, will continue to put him in the elite territory. You might not agree with me on all those points, but I hope I've made a solid argument.
That's a very, very, very solid argument. And do I think Dez should be considered top 5 elite? No, I don't. I think he's very good. I think he's top 10. And I think when you're in the red zone, I think he's an elite red zone threat. That's what I think.
That's the best thing. No, he has one of the best jump balls in the league. That's his specialty.
Exactly. I think he's still an elite red zone threat. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Cowboy fans out there listening to this. And that was a great analysis on you by Des Bryant. I don't want people to think I was shading him there. I see a lot of easy drops from him, which happen, and I've heard people talk about his route tree, about how it needs to be expanded. And then injuries have definitely plagued him. So I don't think he's lost that much of a step, but I do think he's lost a step.
Didn't most of his injuries occur because he was being used as a returner for a short period of time?
Exactly, and they cut that out.
Right, and that was a wise thing to do.
All right, let's move on. So I want you to give me your player. Who stood out to you this week? Who stood out?
Definitely King from Green Bay. As I mentioned before, that just absolutely surprised me, especially with him having hardly any experience in the league and being able to play coverage on Julio Jones like that. I almost envy us not getting him, but I'm completely fine with our cornerback. So definitely a standout performance from that guy.
Definitely Kevin King out of Washington. And then give me who disappointed you. Who was your go home you drunk player this week?
Wow, that's actually a good question there. I'm gonna have to go with Andy Dalton from the Bengals on this one.
He was mine too.
He's been a pretty okay guy. I mean, he's got a couple Pro Bowls under his belt, but now he's set an embarrassing record of going on a certain amount of time not being able to throw a touchdown pass. So that's really bad. Now, you could attribute that to their head coach. I mean, let's put it this way: their head coach has to go. I mean, he has an abysmal postseason record. I mean, the Bengals haven't won a playoff game since 1991?
Something like that. It's been a long time.
So yeah, I'm just absolutely disappointed in him because I know he's played better than this. But for some reason, it's just not clicking with them this year. I haven't really paid attention as much to their games as I normally have, but I'm absolutely disappointed in them.
That was one of my disappointments of this week too. Check this: the Bengals haven't scored a touchdown in their first 2 home games at all. So Andy Dalton definitely needs to step up. Gabe, look, man, I appreciate all the insight you gave today. That was great, man. I thank you for having on the show, and I hope we can have you again.
I would be absolutely honored, and of course, I look forward to hearing more of your episodes as well, with all the variety of guests you might bring on, and I really think you've got something going good here for you.
Hey, thanks, man. Have a good one, all right?
You too.
All right, that was Gabe from El Paso, Texas, guys. Great insight, great guests. As usual, like I always say, I'm looking for guests, man. If you want your voice to be heard, please let me know. DM me, whether that be on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Do whatever you got to do. There's too many ways to reach me. I'm looking to have guests at any point of the season. NBA, NFL, you tell me what you want to talk about, and we'll get it rocking. But let's move on to the next part. I'm going to award my Offensive Player of the Week for this week. It's going to none other than Tom Brady. 30 of 39, 447, 3 TDs. The Patriots had 555 yards against the Saints. Tom Brady had 447 of them. Looking as accurate as ever at the age of 40 as you possibly can. Great week from Tom Brady. For my Defensive Player of the Week, I changed it up. I couldn't just pick one player. I picked the whole team. I got to give it up to the Denver Broncos. Have we ever seen the Cowboys offense look out of whack? Not really. Zeke was held under 10 yards. Dak threw 2 interceptions. That's an astounding show out for an outstanding defense. Those corners, everybody out there, somebody needs to be taking that defense out to dinner, Ruth Chris something. They need to be awarded for that. So defensive player of the week goes to the whole team. I just give it to the Denver Broncos. So let's transition to the final part of the show. These are my final thoughts, where something I saw during the week that I just wanted to speak on. And today it's none other than Kyrie Irving first take interview. Hey, so look, I like Kyrie Irving. I actually don't mind him leaving Cleveland. But if you saw the interview on First Take yesterday, it was a very funny moment to me where Stephen A. asked him about LeBron James, and he just kept giving very short answers. Stephen A. proceeded to ask him, did you talk to LeBron James before you and your representatives met with ownership and let him know you wanted out? And Kyrie just swift no. And Smith proceeded to ask him why not, and he said, why would I have to? And Smith told him, if you don't speak to somebody, they might take it personally. Kyrie Irving gave a well put answer, just a simple yeah. And Smith just asked him the ultimate question, do you care about that at all? And Irving just gave him a clean no, a straight up no. I mean, it's obvious Kyrie doesn't care what people think, and clearly, no matter how professional he sounded, which he did, I might ask, to me personally, I don't think he wanted to play with LeBron James. He was tired of being little brother to big brother in Cleveland, and he sure as hell wasn't going to get left in Cleveland while LeBron gets ready to go to L.A. Fingers crossed. But he said he doesn't think he owes anything to LeBron James now. Now, do I think Kyrie should have at least said something to LeBron? Yes. But do I think we should dwell on it any longer? No. The man made a decision, and as a man, he will live and either succeed with those decisions or fail. But either way, it's going to be Kyrie's way. And Kyrie's way is obviously not with LeBron anymore. And Max Kellerman proceeded to ask him questions, and Kyrie just continued to say, why do you care so much? I think we need to get over this. NBA fans, and I'm a part of that group association. We get real butthurt when these players decide to do things, and if we don't agree with it, we get real butthurt and we think they're making the dumbest decision in their life. These are all grown-ass men, y'all. These are all grown-ass men. If they want to move for this reason, maybe they don't like this guy, let them move. You know what I'm saying? If they succeed, they succeed. If they fail, let them fail. But let them fail making their own decisions. We don't need to be out here trying to make decisions for them. Look, I want to thank all the listeners, wherever you may be listening, whether it be YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook. I want to thank you guys for listening to this second episode of Here's the Deal, and I thank you for all the support. I want to thank Gabriel again for being a great guest, sharing some great insight. And don't forget, everybody, wherever you're listening to, make sure you share this with somebody. Share this with your auntie. Share this with your grandma. Share it with your grandpa. Share it with your son. Share it with everybody. Share it with your son's teacher, your daughter's teacher. I don't care, but get it out. Let everybody know. Here's the Deal is here. I am looking for guests who want to hear their voice heard. This is the spot for it. And I will see you guys next Tuesday. You guys have a great one. I'm out of here.
Thank you for tuning in to Here's the Deal. Tune in for next week's episode. And don't forget to add your host, Michael D. White Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, and the podcast YouTube channel, Here's the Deal.